Welcome back to the podcast and today's episode. Today I welcome Sam. So I'm just going to quickly introduce Sam to the podcast today. So Sam Adams is a men's coach who helps men reconnect with their wild and authentic selves. Drawing from his experience across the globe and his own journey of personal and spiritual healing, he guides men through rewindling practices, addressing trauma, and fostering a deeper connection with nature and their inner selves. Based in the UK, he empowers men to live more fulfilling lives by embracing their masculine and feminine energies and navigating the challenges of modern life with greater awareness and freedom. Sam, welcome. Glad to have you on the episode today and us make it happen. I'm always fascinated to know, particularly looking into men's groups, having men's coaches myself, always an ongoing journey, people involved in this work and your desire, it sounds like, to help men with their work. What got you into this area and actually helping men? Maybe just be interested to hear a little bit about your story that got you to this.
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. It's great to be here. And the answer to that question is because I needed to help myself. I was in this unfulfilled life, feeling a bit lost myself on a number of levels. My relationships, my finances and work, parenting was hard. And I had this unanswered question: what does it mean to be a man? Well, particularly, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for me to be a man? I didn't feel like that had ever been told to me. So I was walking through life feeling lost. So I went on this search of rites of passage and coaching and events and reading
Mm.
to try and answer that question. And that's what's got me to here after a number of years of soul searching and meeting really interesting people.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, it sounded like from what you were saying there it wasn't just like one area you were stuck in life, there was multiple.
Yeah, it's all at once. But I think underneath everything, all those different
Mm.
areas, was that unanswered question. Because if I knew myself better, I think I would have shown up better as a husband, as a father, as a businessman, as someone who wanted to do something with his life and have purpose and direction.
Mm. And how have you found with your purpose and direction, was that how have you been able to uncover that? Was that through just experiences, or was it like getting in touch with maybe a part of you that you had lost? I'm just always curious to hear kind of like how people get forward with their purpose and direction.
Yeah, a lot of soul searching. And
Mm.
what helped me more than anything, Johnny, and it's why I bring it in my work, is connection to the wild.
Mm.
You read it out in the bio there. It's my time. Initially, it was bushcraft and camping and hiking, but learning more and more that nature is home, that we are nature, and seeing myself mirrored back in the river, in the forest, in the mountains. And by sort of meditating or just spending time with these different ecosystems, remembering this sort of ancient answer to that question.
Mm. Oh wow, sounds like nature's been a big element of your journey, and I know for myself and like even other individuals in doing a lot of work on themselves and like men's groups and things like that, they found the benefits of nature. For you, what have been some of the benefits of getting out? And I want to touch a little bit on nature a bit more, but getting out of the day-to-day environment into nature, what benefits can it bring, have you found?
Yeah, lots. There's the fresh air, there's the headspace, there's the response in our bodies chemically of the color green. You know that the
Mm.
human eye can detect more shades of green than any other color. That's amazing. And there are these proven nature therapy and mental health activities, like just getting out for a slow walk, walking the dog regularly, breathing, slowing down. But for me, what's really helped is also just looking a bit deeper. Because I have a background in agriculture, I could understand a bit more of the cycles of plants and trees and the seasonality. And what that did for me was validate my own inner psychological seasonality, that some parts of my life would be up like a happy summer energy.
Mm.
And then there'd be the winter of the soul. And it's okay to go through a dark space. It's okay to have that sort of seasonal drop or depression, rather than making it wrong and quickly turning to medication or distraction, dopamine hits. That's been so liberating for me, is to say it's okay. That's what I say to the men I work with. It's okay to have a winter. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to have a shit day. You can get through this, and it's just as valid as the good times.
I love that. Yeah, because I've been many times guilty of just being a doer. It's like go, 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 go. And it's almost ignoring that, like, oh, I'm feeling a bit down. Meh, go away. Kind of definitely in the past. And I know, speaking to other guys, I'm not alone in that, or humanity in general, but guys, a lot I've talked to have mentioned that.
Johnny, that's what we're sold. We're
Yeah.
sold that in the capitalist model, like this constant growth. The trajectory has to be up, otherwise you're failing at life. That's not how nature works, which is my point. Nature allows time to decompose, to stop. And I think men haven't been shown that way. Men aren't naturally able to remember that. We don't have a monthly cycle like the woman in our lives. They get that sort of in their monthly cycle, whereas we need to be reminded of that, either by our woman or by the trees and the plants that hibernate every winter. It's okay not to have that constant output. Take longer holidays in the winter. Like, that's dark. It's not the time we should be doing our 40-hour weeks. It's unnatural to be doing that.
I never thought about it when like that, when you shared it as well. And I think that's a really good perspective in terms of, like women go through their cycles, and then they're going to have these different changes in energy and emotions. But yeah, what we're conditioned to believe is like, get on, like work those 40, 60, maybe more sort of hour weeks sometimes, even when we're exhausted. So like, how, apart from nature, have you found beneficial to be of those emotions?
Well, I'll give myself permission to work hard in the summer. So I will be working a 60-hour week in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then to balance that and to be more attuned to nature, I'll work a 30-hour week in the winter, or I've just took a 3-week holiday off. So I take more of my leave in the winter. So that didn't quite answer your question, but these are practices that come out of that reflection, changing your lifestyle to match it, giving yourself permission to be lazy in the winter, but also to really give it horns in the summer, like go for it. We can't do that all year round, as I've said, but there are times and place for everything. And when the emotions follow, it's cutting yourself some slack.
Yeah.
It's a tough day and it's okay, rather than making ourselves wrong. And for men, I think one of the tools that can help that is practicing vulnerability. So saying to your partner, or even I'll say to my children, I'm feeling down today. I'm having a tough day, kids. And it validates their own feelings, because they are so connected to the seasonality and flow, the waters of the heart. And for me as a man, that's very powerful, I think, to model that to my children and say, I'm being vulnerable. I'm having a tough day. I've got a bit of a headache, a bit stressed about this and that. Don't need to go into detail with the kids, obviously. And then everyone just knows how you're doing, and you can find support rather than isolating oneself, which is a habit, a tendency for men. We isolate ourselves. I think vulnerability can help to build bridges of connection and then feel supported.
Vulnerability, I believe is a huge piece myself in my personal perspective as well, and being able to express emotions. For some individuals, and totally being there, it can be, I've heard it can be quite tough to reach out. It's like, how do I reach out? Who do I reach out to? For, you mentioned there being vulnerable in relationship, and other places outside your family, maybe for the individual who's maybe just a little bit stuck on their head, like, I've got so much in my head, I'm a guy, I don't know where to go. Where can they start?
Yeah. And I think there's another challenge in that mix, which is a lot of us are emotionally numb. That was certainly my case until my
Mm.
early 20s. I had disconnected from my emotions because of childhood challenges. It was too painful to have feelings. So I see a lot
Mm.
of men who the first step is just learning to work out how do you feel. And it's like a muscle, it requires working out and training that muscle to practice emotional literacy. First step. And there's different places to do that. You mentioned the partner and the kids. Going back to nature, when my marriage broke down, I went out to the forest every week. It was a time for me to be on my own and practice emotional vulnerability in the safety of the trees. So I might imagine that a tree is one of the people in my life and just shout, I'm so
Mm.
angry, rather than spewing it onto the kids or friend or colleague. It's like the tree could hold it, or throwing some rocks into the sea. That's cathartic. Like, I'm angry, I'm feeling frustrated, I don't know what it's about, but there's just this fire energy in my body and I just want to smash some wood. It's the same as going to the gym, punching a punch bag. The same with tears. Like when I was grieving once, I was so sad, I just went for a walk and it just started crying. And that was helpful. It was a safe, private space, walking down a footpath in the middle of a farm and just able to cry. I felt safer there than I did with people. So that
Mm.
was my first answer. There are men's groups all over the place and talking groups and helplines where we can practice it with others. And I've done all of that to help me through some hard times.
Mm. Men's groups, a powerful one for sure. I really, I wrote down quite a lot about what you said about nature though, and being able to go out there and maybe shout at a tree. You know, maybe in the gym, you don't want to do that, but maybe you want to. It comes out in physical movement like a punch bag or weight session. But yeah, it's a really interesting one I like about the being able to express to like trees or throw into the river. It's a really, really powerful one. And one thing sort of I feel like is linked to that and I want to touch a bit on because there's lots of definitions out there of what I'm going to touch on and interpretations is masculine and feminine energy. Be really interesting, Sam, to hear what you understand or have learned for yourself what masculine energy is and what feminine energy is, and how we can use both maybe to our benefit and how yeah, you'll work with that.
Yeah, I use that a lot, Johnny, and it's so helpful to help us understand ourselves. These are just words, but they speak to what I think is an energetic spectrum,
Mm.
these poles, and they are in us, whether we're male or female or other bodied. And I believe in them so much. I even got their symbols tattooed on my hands. So you can see that if you're watching the
Ah, cool.
recording. For those not watching the recording, on my right hand, I've got a circle tattooed,
Yeah.
and that's the feminine. That for me, that's the symbol of femininity. On my left hand, I've got a straight line, and that is the symbol of masculinity.
Mm.
So whether we call it yin and yang, circle and line, feminine, masculine, there's other language to describe these poles. They really, really help. Masculinity is straight thinking, it's narrow, it's single focused, it's some of the stereotypes of men, like can't do more than one thing at once, tunnel vision, but also our superpower to like get on with a task, to smash it out, to really focus and dedicate effort and attention to achieving whatever we're doing. The femininity is circular multiplicity, able to think of multiple things, hold this and that simultaneously. She's able to connect with things beyond the immediate. The feminine can weave things together that are beyond the current, like it's beyond time and space. It's almost like this magical sixth sense she has, and it's her superpower. And yeah, we all have the ability to do that. But for me as a masculine man, I know I excel with the straight line.
Mm.
And I'm learning every day, trying to bring more of the circle into my life. The system we've inherited in this century is one of just straight line thinking and the circles being oppressed.
Mm.
So partly what I'm doing is helping men reconnect to the feminine, reconnect to the circle, which is about emotional intelligence. It's about the unseen, the invisible. It's about the mystery of life. It's about faith. And it's also about cyclical nature, like I said, with the seasons. If the masculine straight line is just summer, the circle has space for winter and spring and autumn.
And what do you find if and what you touched on was like whatever gender we identify with as we've got both of these energies, masculine and feminine, lightly dominant in one, and again that's could be either any gender, and you could identify more with masculine or feminine. For guys who maybe are identifying more of the masculine and just not getting into their feminine at all, or very minimal, what can be some of the consequences of that?
Great question. There's a lot, and we're so surrounded by it. It's sometimes hard to identify them because it's everywhere. The consequences of just being in our masculine mean we can burn out because we are just so focused on that treadmill of life, going through the motions. We forget to step away from that and think of other things. So there's burnout, there's reaching ahead and then suddenly realizing there's a catastrophe here. My mental health, my finances, my marriage is all on its last legs. So there's a number of layers there. Like things get to a place of catastrophe because the man's just been following this linear path. Another one, massive one, is the straight line divides. It's the divide and conquer approach of colonialism. So terrible global examples there of if men are just thinking in the masculine, then they forget about all the other elements of what is life, what is justice, what is humanity. So for me, the imbalance of these two poles led to colonialism, slavery, and misogyny, all of these devastating things that we're picking the pieces up of right now.
So there's some, you've outlined quite a few, there's some historical, like societal impacts of being too dominant in one. And then for ourselves, emotionally, there can be things like burnout, exhaustion. I think you're talking about earlier, like in your summer, 60-hour weeks, but then in your winter, it's 30 or less, or maybe a 3-week holiday or break or just recovery when you perhaps get a little bit out of that energy because you want to get between both. Which is powerful.
Exactly. So by remembering the circle, we can have more space in our lives, more balance, more harmony, more sustainability.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely an ongoing work to balance the two, or not balance 50-50, but make sure both are being acknowledged, certainly in my life. So yeah. Sam, I know you help people address, or help guys address trauma as well. That's one of the things you do. I always like to ask this: what's trauma for you?
Trauma is when something painful has happened that hasn't been allowed to be processed by the body or the mind or the being. So something painful, extreme emotion would come up, fear, danger, usually fear or grief. And then it's not given space to unravel, to integrate, to be spoken through, to get support. So it just sort of lives there like a cancer, like a bomb that's waiting to explode. And it lives there, doesn't it? It lives in the body, it lives in the heart, it lives in patterns of behavior, trying to survive with that unresolved trauma. It's like a wound. It's a wound that hasn't had space to heal.
And how, I mean, there's many ways I've learned to kind of start to look at it, and different tools out there. For you, what have you found, useful in terms of practices to work with maybe any unresolved trauma or wounds?
Yeah, I mentioned talking to the trees, which
Mm,
might sound really weird. But that type of dramatization of trauma has been one of the most helpful things for me. So if it was a parent that caused the trauma that hurt me, then to go to a place where I can reenact it and create a different result to what happened to me as a child. So imagining that tree as my father or mother, and then having a conversation with them that changes the narrative.
mm,
And we do this in our men's groups as well, that rather than a tree, it's one of my mates play acting as my dad or mum or someone else. And then I'm able to have that chat with them there in a circle with other people helping me to guide the questions. And rather than showing up as a 4-year-old Sam who is hurting, I can now show up as a 40-year-old Sam and change what happened, right? Change the story. Yes, the thing still happened to me. I can't ever change that, but I can change my relationship to it by a reenactment of that thing.
mm. So yeah, going in and almost changing the feeling in the body and the association that you've
Yeah.
had.
Yeah, and repositioning the characters in the theater of my soul. So there's these
Mm,
different parts. So when we have a trauma, then part of our soul breaks off at that age. So for me, it was about 4 or 5 years old, and he's sort of there in my inner theater, and I need to find him, support him, And these younger parts that are split off because of trauma, they call for attention, often through sickness. For me, it was migraines. I had devastating migraines for about 10 years, and they only stopped once I did some of this therapeutic work.
mm. Yeah, it's interesting how physical, like I've heard this, like speaking to people like yourself on this podcast and others, of the physical symptoms that can come up as a lot has been stored in the body from the past, and it's actually still living there a little bit. And I think when I did breath work, sometime when I started breath work and doing my somatic breath work and going into parts of the body, I don't know if you do much of that breath work or anything like that, but even going to certain parts of the body, it was just like that my mind could have never got to by consciously thinking about it. And it's crazy,
Yeah.
definitely in that side. Is that something you use much, breath work, just out of curiosity?
It's not one of my skill sets, but I have people I work with who bring it
Okay.
in, and it helps me too. So yeah, I'm not trained in that one.
Oh, okay, cool. Which, yeah, I like the nature elements. I want to touch a bit on nature again, and dealing with grief and maybe a lot. And for me, grief isn't, and we've all got different definitions, but for me, it's not necessarily a loss of a person. It could be a situation, an event, a job, a relationship, or any of those factors. How can nature help us work through grief?
Yeah. And it's really topical that we talk about this because on this seasonality map that I work with, grief is for me around springtime.
Mm,
So for those listening at spring, just to look outside and see the daffodils, see the amount of water in a lot of the floods at the moment, all of that speaks to me of grief. Obviously, the tears are water, and working with the elements, water and grief go hand in hand. It's not just tears, but it's that sense of being consumed, like you're flooding inside and I can't breathe because something's so deeply sad, and I'm missing that partner or that country or that job or that loved one. That's wet, right? That's the water of emotions. So in my work, I connect with the element of water. I help men do that in different practices and activities to help them understand how water, or how emotion rather, flows through the body, through the heart, to give yourself permission to cry, overcoming that pressure that men have been told boys don't cry.
mm,
Yeah, suck it up. And maybe there's time for that, but it's equally important to give space to cry. So being in nature is like validating tears, validating emotion, validating that we are emotional beings, and the forest and the riverlands this springtime can really remind us of the importance of tears. The other thing water teaches us, Johnny, is it connects across the space. It fills every cavity of a cave system. And so what that speaks to me metaphorically is that water is about connection. So linking the metaphors here, grief is really about connection. I was so connected to that person. They've now gone. Oh, that's why my heart breaks and I'm flooding with tears, because I want connection. And underneath traumas and anger and frustrations and all of these thoughts and words we use is usually this deep desire just to have that place of connection and love. And what loves us more than anything and feel connected more than anything? It's nature. It's coming home to that perfect mother and father of the trees and that perfect space that we evolved as human beings to be part of. That is home more than any city. Yeah,
I love that. So if you've got a like I live outside a harbour in Bristol. I live on like you may know like the harbour side bit. So you've got some river there, and then you've got the woods over there. So it's a good opportunity to run there or walk there, and opportunity. So for the listener, if they've got some water around them, is it good to kind of get into? Would you guide them to invite them to just regularly get into a practice of connecting to water where possible?
Yeah, I think if there's feelings that are there, particularly grief, then water connection can help. And we're so quick, I think, to rush our showers in the morning, get ready for work, but to have a practice where you slow down, take time to be in the bath or go for a swim. Water obviously helps us to float. So even to get out to the sea, salty water, and we float, there's that sense of being held in our emotion, in our pain, in our grief. And that, from my experience, has really helped people to feel less overwhelmed, less alone in the grief. So yeah, really getting the whole body in the water regularly can help move grief through. And then there's little practices, just taking time with a cup of tea, drinking something herbal. There's different herbal teas that can help release emotion. So rather than just our normal English tea or coffee, but to take a very mindful, slow, silent practice of tea, call it a tea ceremony or just slow drinking tea. No music, phones off, just you and your cuppa. Sit down, connect with that water in your mouth. How does it smell? What does it taste like? How do you feel as you drink the tea? Any new feelings coming up? You know, some of these herbs are really powerful. I like to drink mugwort tea. It's one of our native herbs here. And it speaks to me. Each time I drink it, I feel this sense of comfort. I feel this sense of power. I feel this, it's almost psychedelic, although I don't think it is officially. Mugwort helps me dream as well. Some people drink it before going to bed. So I'd recommend that as well.
It's taking time with drinking teas, like herbal, different teas. Ah, that's an interesting one. Never thought, never thought of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are very often speaking to many people about this, and myself are very quick to kind of speed up the morning process, and even just connecting to your shower, or bath or swim, can be a beautiful practice. It sounds like. Sam, as we kind of like wrap up today, I know there's a ton more you help guys with in particular through your program, through your mentoring, really help them, develop themselves. First of all, where can the listener find you if they want to connect with you? And anything you've got coming up at all, be really great to hear about. And is there anything you'd like to leave us with today?
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. It's been great to talk about these themes, and people can find me at my website, samueladams.co.uk. It's my full name. Or I'm on Instagram, samadams_wildman. And I've got this program coming up mid-March to the end of May. It's called The Forest, and it's exploring all of these themes we've talked about. There's online meetings for those internationally or can't get to the in-person events, which include 2 wilderness experiences where we'll be amongst the trees, looking at these metaphors, looking at both emotional literacy for men and emotional resilience when emotions get too much and we feel like we're drowning in the water. So that's a 3-month program, group program to learn about these things, to find liberation around emotions particularly. For those, you asked me for a closing thought. Just connection. Like, just take time regularly, at least once a day, just to pause. Maybe it's just that cup of tea or that extended shower in the morning. Mindfully slow down, take a conscious choice to slow down, take a bit of silence, switch off the phone and the socials. And how are you feeling? Just note that. If you want to go to level 2, get a piece of paper and a pen and write it down. Do a bit of journaling. That's helpful just to move that energy through words. I'm looking forward to creating a more connected and free world full of healthy emotions.
Love that. The beauty of connection. And yeah, definitely will recommend to check out Sam's work and his group opportunity as well. So we'll be sure to link that up. Just check the show notes below to reach out to Sam and get in touch with his group program. So a massive thank you, Sam, for coming on today and everything you shared.
Thank you, Johnny.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.